Lord Jesus, thank you that we can gather this afternoon and learn a bit more about leadership. And I pray that as we look at scriptures today, you will excite our hearts and inspire faith and courage in each one of us. In Jesus' name, amen. So we have been working through the series, and I'm not going to recap the past sessions, but today's session is on the tests of a leader. And I think what you need to know is even before you're a leader, you're being tested. We're always being tested whether we realize it or not, because as soon as you're old enough to start influencing the world around you, you're bringing a good influence or a bad influence, and you're getting some things right and you're getting other things wrong. And so leadership itself comes with a series of tests. And today we're going to do a brief introduction, and then I'll look at three categories of tests. Those tests you face before you lead, while you lead, and after you lead, because leadership is also not a forever thing. In some cases you lead in one role for a season and then you switch into a different role. So we're going to look, that's just for breaking it down. It's really just a really long list. So all leadership involves testing. And the point of doing this lesson is that you would be given some ideas of different kinds of tests that you might face. And if you can think ahead about the test you might be facing one day, you can prepare for it better. And if you prepare for a test, there's a chance you'll do better when the test comes. And so we want to be aware of the kinds of tests leaders face. And we can't possibly look at all of them because there's literally hundreds of tests you face. And in the process, what is being tested is either your character or your skill. It's either a question of how reliable you are as a person, how much integrity there is in your character, or it's a test of how good you are at that particular thing that you're being required to do. And the thing is, most of our lives we get taught to develop our skills. We put a lot of emphasis on, how good your maths is, or how good, your piano playing is, or how good you are at whatever that skill is that you carry or might need. Like, have you done investment into learning to sing better if you're a singer, or have you, improved yourself? But not many people talk about improving your character because it's much more complicated. But in fact, God is the one who's mostly at work improving our character by putting us into situations that test and reveal and break something in us in order to build something better in us. So God as a parent is actually at work on our character all the time. We don't always realize it, but the priority in God's eyes is actually character before gifting. He's more interested in the development of your integrity than he is in how good you are as a batsman or a soccer player or any of the other things people in the world celebrate. They pay huge amounts of money to a guy to kick a ball around a grass field. God's far more interested in that guy's marriage than he is in that guy's ability to score a goal in a soccer game. And so a leader must develop character and skill, not just skill. And you have to start to think about your life in terms of your character, not just your gifting. And a good leader doesn't rely on existing gifting, but develops both their natural gifting and their character. And so I would say to you, the tendency for most of us is when you're good at something, you just want to do that one thing. If you're good at something, you kind of enjoy that, but you don't want to do something else. But a leader actually has to be aware of more than just their own strength. They have to be able to do more than just one thing. And so you shouldn't just rely on your gifting. Gifting, no matter how great it is, only takes you a certain distance in life. So I could be a good enough preacher, but unless I'm developing my preaching gift, I'm not going to go further than a certain point. So I'll be soon on a plateau, and I can't go any further unless I learn from others or invest in that gift. But in addition to developing my gifting, I have to realize it's my character that will determine my end distance that I can run, because even the best gifted preacher in the world, if he destroys his marriage or has an affair, he's losing his opportunity to use his gift. So again, this whole idea is we need to look at these tests as our friends, because the tests that come have the purpose of actually developing you. If you're never put to the test, you'll never grow. You'll never see where you're at. You'll never realize what you need to pay attention to. So welcome the tests that you face. And here are some of these tests that you're going to face before becoming a leader. This is kind of a blurred kind of definition, because some of these tests you face as a leader, some of them before you become a leader, but mostly these ones are why some people never become a leader, because they fail the basic tests. The basic test, you could say there, for me, there are three of them. The test of being faithful in the little, the test of being bypassed, and the test of identity and motivation. So let's look at these three tests one after the other. The test of being faithful in the little. Well, Jesus said, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. So if you're not trustworthy in some small matter, why will God entrust you with something more important? If you don't get this right, you don't move forwards as a leader. Whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? It's quite a profound comment, because the world and its systems and people in the world run after money as if it's the ultimate thing. And we look at these super successful businesses and businessmen and we think they've really done well. But Jesus said that's the little thing. If you've not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, so all the riches of the world, who will trust you with true riches? So worldly wealth is a small test. You as a believer should be able to handle millions of dollars without being corrupted, tempted, without stealing, without skimming. Faithfully administrate that, because that's not even the true riches that God wants to give you. The true riches that you're given to actually really steward well is people. It's people that go into eternity. People have eternal value in God's eyes. World and its riches will pass away. The world will end. No money goes to heaven. There's no currency in heaven. But we have to be tested on earth with something. And so God's given us this little thing called money and possessions and said, how well will you look after money and possessions? If you've not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? And some people wonder why they haven't been blessed with this or a that, scooter or a motorbike or a house or whatever. And actually, the last time they borrowed something from their friend, they used it and then they gave it back in a mess. They didn't keep it clean. They didn't look after it. They just treated it poorly, and God saw that. And God sees everything. And so these tests, if you're not passing them, you're actually still in kindergarten, like preschool, when it comes to learning leadership. These are the things everyone has to learn. Even our little children, we're teaching them how to play with toys gently. Don't break toys. I don't care if you're 3 years old. You can learn to respect something that doesn't belong to you. Even if it was given to you, it was given as a gift. Take care of it. It's a trust. It's a stewardship. So, well done, my good servant, his master replied. Because you've been trustworthy in a very small matter, take charge of 10 cities. Who lives in the city? People. The reward there is about people. It's not about money. This is David's life. Very interesting example of being faithful in the little. When David was anointed to be the king of Israel, he was out in the kind of back end of the place. No one knew really where he was. He was taking care of the sheep, and they had to find him. And it says in 1 Samuel 17 verse 14 to 18 that David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, that was the king of Israel, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. So his brothers were on a career promotion path, and David was just an errand boy. He was running back and forth to tend sheep. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. That's Goliath. Jesse said to his son David, take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of the unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them. You see what David's doing? He's an errand boy. He's carrying sandwiches for his brothers after he was anointed by Samuel. Because the text that comes before is in chapter 16. Samuel found him and anointed him to be the future king of Israel. And after that, what's David doing? He's taking sandwiches to his brothers. So the point is, are you willing to be faithful in the little? A good view of leadership and a test for your leadership is, are you prepared to do the very small tasks, no matter how anointed you think you are, no matter how big your future is? So promotion comes neither from east nor west nor from the south, but God is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another. Your promotion is in the hands of God. I used to feel like my promotion was in the hands of man. When I was in a church plant and I was a young guy and I was serving, doing everything I could for my pastor, I just wanted my pastor to recognize me and give me promotion. Let me be a deacon, or let me be an elder, even better. And it was like my pastor was blind. In the end, I was praying, God, open his eyes. He doesn't see me. And I thought that my promotion was being roadblocked by my pastor. And my ambition was actually fleshly, and my promotion was being roadblocked by God. Promotion doesn't come from man. It's impossible that the Almighty God cannot open your boss's eyes and promote you. The promotion is not in the hands of man, it's in God's hands. God, who is so powerful, could not possibly be stopped by one little manager. If God wants that guy to give you a raise, he cannot say no. That guy will give you a raise. So the question is, why is not God sending you forward faster? Probably because you've got some test to pass. There's some faithfulness that you need to establish in your life. Some pattern where God sees failure and he wants success before you promote it. Maybe it's punctuality. Maybe it's just how courteously you speak to other people. God cares about character issues, and your promotion is in his hands. Why are you not moving up faster on the ladder? Well, it took me probably, I thought it would take a year to get to eldership in a church. It took about 15 years. I was a slow learner. So trust God with your future, but what that means is be excellent in your present. The test is now. Faithfulness is a now test for all of us. So steward well. For example, when you borrow something, I was taught, and this is true, if you borrow someone's car, when you give it back to them, you fill the tank up before you give it to them. You don't borrow a guy's car and it had 3 quarters on the tank, you use a quarter, you give it back. That's not good stewardship. That's just taking abuse of somebody else's friendship. So the idea of being faithful in the little is tested in very practical ways. When you take something from someone to use it, when you give it back, do you give it back in better condition than when you received it? That thing God sees. It's an attitude of heart. Either you're a user at other people's expense, or you're someone who takes responsibility. The leader is the one who takes responsibility. You don't take it for granted. That you have no sense of entitlement. And so that's a test of being faithful in the little. Another amateur test that I failed repeatedly, probably again for years, is when you aren't chosen. What happens when someone else gets picked for the promotion? Someone else gets the opportunity. You may be at work and you see your colleague and the job you wanted. There was a job opening and the one you wanted, he got. How do you feel in your heart? Are you envious, like angry, jealous, like why him and not me? Why did he get to do that and not me? That's a test of leadership. You are being bypassed so that it can be seen. How will you respond? What's going on in your heart? Again, for me, my career ambition was in the church. So I could mask it all in spirituality, like, it's a noble thing to want to be an elder. And then you came and you poured out your life for the church. And then this other guy who's only been a member for half the length of time that you've been a member, he gets put on eldership. And you don't even trust him yet, but your pastor's willing to trust him and promote him. And then you look and as you sit there and you see them calling out his name, this is our future elder, you clap like, I'm really not so happy about this. And after about 3 or 4 other guys got promoted to eldership, and our pastor said, it was always easy for him to see by the expression on our faces that we weren't ready for promotion because we weren't celebrating the other person's promotion. That's the test of being bypassed. If you're idolizing this position or this ministry or this profile, this privilege, what someone else gets, if you're idolizing it, if you're worshiping it in the wrong way in your heart, then you get upset when someone else gets it and you don't. You're jealous, you're unhappy. That's a kind of idolatry, and that's how you know you're being idolatrous, is when jealousy and envy comes up in your heart when someone else is promoted. When you finally say, Jesus, I'll do whatever you ask me to do, and you see someone else promoted, and then you feel happy for them, and you're genuinely celebrating that things are moving forward for someone, and not at the same time feeling sorry for yourself. When you're finally free, then suddenly promotion comes. It's amazing. And we should all be tested on being bypassed. And in fact, again and again. It doesn't happen only once. You fail it several times before you pass it, and just when you thought you passed it, maybe it comes around again to test you. See, it's a test that sifts out carnal ambition and exposes an idolatrous view of leadership in us. We see it with the disciples. Sometimes they asked, who's going to sit closest to Jesus? Who will Jesus invite to sit at his right hand? Do you remember that passage the disciples are asking? Jesus, when you come into your throne, who are you going to take to sit at your right hand? And he rebuked them. In this case, he's been talking about death, and he's talking about, how John's going to die. And Peter asks him, what about John? Or he's been talking about how Peter's going to die. And then Peter asks, what about John, or we assume it's John, the disciple that was close to Jesus at the Last Supper. And Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I come back, what is that to you? In other words, if I've picked for you to die and him to live, what's your problem? See, someone once said God's favor isn't fair. Well, God's favor is always right, but it isn't always the way we want it to be. So he knows what he's doing, and life is like that. When you see one guy getting promoted, you're thinking, oh God, why him and not me? And God would look at you and say, what's it to you? Why are you jealous of him? What you don't know is that guy's promotion could also be his suffering. That's what happened to Paul. Paul was persecuting the church. Jesus met with him on the road to Damascus, and then what happened next is very interesting. He is appointed to be this massive apostle who would basically write the majority of the New Testament and plant churches all over the place. But Jesus expressed that profile like this: he will see how much he has to suffer for me. Jesus' perspective of the promotion was it was pain. But when we look at Paul, we're like, super apostle, I wish I could be like Paul. Maybe not so fast, hey? Then the third test here in this category is the test of identity and motivation. And this is a test that is really about why you want to lead. As a leader, before you're promoted, very often the reason you want to lead and serve is so that you can get more self-worth. What do you do when your offering is rejected? Like, you're offering your very best, and someone says, nah, we don't need that. Don't need that. Hey, I could do that for you. No, don't worry, I'll ask this guy. If your identity, your sense of worth and value is attached to the service that you can offer, it's in the wrong place. You should know that you are loved and accepted by God just as you are, not for what you can give him. And so when you look at ministry in the church, there are thousands of people in this city alone who idolize ministry because they feel if they could only do that ministry, God would love them more. They don't think of it that consciously, but that's really what's going on inside of them. I would be worth more if I could do more. And if I could just get that job, people would think I'm amazing. They would think I'm really precious. And so you come with your best offering. I'm gonna sing for you, Jesus. And then the worship team leader says, "No, we don't need you in our band." You're like, you're shattered. You're broken because you've been rejected. But it's not you that's been rejected. It's just your offering. The key to getting free here is to understand you are not your offering. You are not what you can give to God. You are you. You are a being. And so it's not about what you can give to God. It's about who you are. You're His son or His daughter, and you're accepted on that basis, not on the basis of your service. So you are not your offering, and your gift does not define you. What would happen to me if I lost my voice forever? If I idolize preaching and ministry in the pulpit, my whole world will be finished. But if not, I'll probably turn to worshiping God with writing. Maybe you won't see me on a Sunday, but I'll express my thoughts another way. I'll still worship God. I don't need to preach. Part of me absolutely loves preaching. What do you do if God takes away that very opportunity? Well, this is actually a test you should pass before you become a leader, because so often we're idolizing that thing again that says, I have purpose, I have value if I'm doing that. And I want to say, can you find purpose and value in just being at the feet of Jesus? Out of that place of being at peace with who you are, you can bring whatever you have, and whether it's received or despised by others, it doesn't matter. You have nothing to prove. Mary clearly had a lot to prove. Martha rather had a lot to prove, because she was upset with Mary for not helping her. And Jesus said to Martha that Mary chose the better thing. It was very worthwhile that you meditate on that question of why you want to serve or why you want to lead. Do you need to be a leader, or do you just see that as one of many ways you can add value? Our identity must not hinge upon our gifting or what we have to offer. Character before gifting, friendship before function. These are life-bringing truths. They're not just catchphrases. They're actually life-bringing truths that if you learn to build relationship independent of your skills and gifts, then when you pour your skills and gifts out, it's not going to blow up or melt down, or you don't get needy of affirmation or needy of appreciation. You just give and you enjoy giving. But if you can't give, you're still happy. That's how it should be. Moving on then. Here's some test questions for you. Are you defining yourself by what you do? That's why I don't want people to call me pastor. And my name's Kim. I'm a pastor. It's one of the things I do. I serve that way now, but God could take it away from me, and I still want to be a happy person. So don't define yourself by what you do. Are you feeding too much of your ego off your role? In other words, does your sense of importance come from the role you carry? I'm important because I'm a leader. No, that's not how Paul wrote about leadership. When you read Paul's writing about leadership, he speaks about the apostles being the scum of the earth at the end of the procession. A better understanding of leadership is that you're actually just the tail of the animal. You're just like, anyway. Do you need to be needed? If you need to be needed, you need to settle that issue. It's an identity issue. You're loved even if you can't help. You're loved even if you got nothing to give. We love you for you, not for what you give. That's what you should understand. Are you still committed even when you aren't contracted? That's a test, eh? You see what happens if a guy's been in the band and then he's there and he's passionate and everything's cool, and then you say, for the next 3 months, can you just attend the church meetings, don't play in the band? Well, then he's here, and a week later he's in that row, and a week later he's in that row. The next week you don't see him. He's not here at all. Are you still committed when you're not contracted? Are you still there even when you're not put to use? Here's a question for you. Are you a mercenary, a conscript, or a volunteer? There was a whole message one guy preached on these 3 roles. It's so wonderful. See, a mercenary is somebody who, it's not a misspelling of missionary, hey? I wonder when they look at mercenary. No, I'm not. I'm from South Africa, but I'm a missionary. Mercenaries go where they get the best pay and they offer their gift to the highest bidder. So within your life of service, if you say, I'm leaving here because they won't appreciate my gift, I'm going to go where my gift is appreciated. That's a mercenary mindset. Conscripts are those who are forced to serve. I'm doing it because you told me I must. That's also not kingdom culture. Kingdom culture is a volunteer. Somebody who says, I am offering to do this. I don't have to, I don't need to, I don't need pay for it. I'm willing, I'm a volunteer. You're not forcing me, I want to help. Let me know how I can help. I'm a volunteer. That's the kingdom culture. So these people will fall into those three categories in how they offer their service. Mercenary, conscript, or volunteer. Volunteers are serving from freedom and for love. That's how you should serve. Even in the marketplace. You don't go to your boss like a slave and say, I'm only going to do what you pay me to do. Da, 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 da. You must work hard with diligence as a volunteer, as unto the Lord. And you are free to do more, not less. And then once you become a leader, those were the three before you lead. I'm never going to finish on time today. Once you become a leader, you can't even, the list is so long. That's the point of that slide. These are just 14 tests. We'll run through them quickly, but the impression you should get is there's a lot more testing that comes. There's the test of being misunderstood. It's part of any visionary leadership. So often we feel self-pity. People just don't understand. They don't get it. It's like me. I'm trying to take the church forward and I'm like, I want to have electronic drums. No one says, great idea, let's do that. No, because if you've seen something and you're visionary, by definition, the others haven't seen it. So by definition, you must be misunderstood at some point as a leader. If you're going to be visionary, it's because you're seeing something further than someone else can see. Therefore, they just don't get it when you first start telling them. When the men came to Jesus, they said, John the Baptist sent us to ask you, are you the one who is to come or should we expect someone else? Can you imagine? John the Baptist was Jesus' cousin. He was the guy who baptized Jesus. I mean, that's quite a thing to put on your CV. And now, after doing all that and saying, behold the Lamb of God, a few months have passed or a couple of years, John is in prison. John is about to get his head chopped off. He's like, this isn't going the way I thought. Jesus must have felt so misunderstood. He's like, what are you guys thinking? Of course I am. Don't you see the miracles? Isn't it proof? But no, here's his close cousin John saying, are you even the one? When you're in the test of being misunderstood, remember, as a leader, your task is to move people forward, not to be understood. I mean, you should do your best to make yourself understood. But the fact that sometimes people don't get it, don't make them the enemy as a result. As a problem with this is the test is, will you reject people and say, you're the obstacle, I'm going it alone. I've got vision. If you don't want to get it, I'll leave you, I'll go on my own. That's not leadership. Leadership is, I've got vision, you don't understand it, you don't get it, but now I'm going to take you gently with me into that vision. And as a husband and father, that's been my biggest test, is how do I actually lead my family? So this isn't only about church leadership, it's about how you lead the people God's given to you. Do you get frustrated with them and then just break away from them? Or do you see where you need to be as a family and then somehow guide your spouse and guide your children into that vision you have for the kind of home or family you're trying to build? This is the problem. We as leaders get frustrated when we're misunderstood, so we tend to get louder and louder because they won't hear us. The problem, though, is people are not deaf. They're just slow to understand. Have you ever noticed when you meet someone and you think they're stupid, they don't understand you, that you raise your voice? You speak louder because they just don't seem to hear. But the solution is actually to increase the clarity of your message, not the intensity of your message. So don't cry and perform. Don't stomp your feet because you misunderstood. Slow down. Your job as a leader, if you need to be understood, is to be more clear, to clarify. Take more time to explain the rationale behind your leadership. Don't just tell your wife, we're going to Ethiopia. It's like, I don't want to go to Ethiopia. No, we're going. You don't raise your voice louder and tell your wife to follow you to Ethiopia. God told us to go. That's not enough. You have to slow down. You have to say, I was praying. I saw writing on the wall. I know it's usually judgment, but this time I thought God was saying, you need to go to Ethiopia. And this is why I believe this is right for us. What do you think? And then give her time to pray and process it. And you take the decision to the person to let them process it. Clarify your thinking. But that takes a lot of energy. That's what leadership is about. It's a test. Are you willing to take the energy to communicate? Communicate your message. Clarify. That's one of the tests. Another test is being misrepresented. Joseph and Jesus were both wrongly accused. Here in Madagascar, this is going to happen for sure. Guys love to slander people because they don't work with proof and truth. They work with rumor. And so they tell lies about people. What will you do when someone tells lies about you? How do you respond when you are misrepresented? Actually, I don't think this test is as hard as the previous one. Being misunderstood hurts more because it's those you're trying to lead that misunderstand you. It's those you're not trying to lead. It's the outsiders that misrepresent you. Now, when you're misrepresented, when somebody speaks ill of you, the leader takes the high ground. He always takes the high road. What does that mean? It means you never step down into the mud and start throwing mud. Someone throws mud at you, he must be in a wet place. Where does the water lie? At the bottom. Do you go down into the mud and start throwing mud back at that person, or do you take the high road? A leader always takes the high road. You never counterattack someone who misrepresents you. No self-justification, no seeking vindication. Jesus was silent before his accusers. Joseph went to prison. What happened to Joseph is Potiphar's wife said that he raped her. He did not. He did the very opposite. She tried to rape him. It's true. Go read the story. She gets so close to him after nagging him to go to bed with her. In her being scorned by this young man, she gets angry and grabs a hold of him. He wriggles free from his own coat and runs away from her. So she's literally pulling his clothes off. And he runs away, and then she accuses him of rape. What happens? He goes to prison. He doesn't hire the best defense attorney and get free. It appears to me that Jesus could have hired a defense attorney, but he stood before Pilate and he took the accusations. Why could they do that? Why can you have a breakthrough in this area of your leadership? The key thing is understand that reputation and character are two different things. Joseph lost his reputation but kept his character. Think that through. Someone says something bad about you. If you step down into the mud and start saying bad things about them, you've lost your character. But if they say bad things about you and other people believe them, you've lost your reputation, but you've still got your character. You know what the truth is. You don't have to defend the truth. God promises that in the end, the truth will come out. The truth will speak for itself. So that's why Jesus could be silent before his accusers, because God will be his vindication. How did God vindicate him? He raised him from the dead. How will God vindicate you? Wait and see. But God says it's his to avenge, it's his to judge. So if someone speaks ill of you as a leader, the test of being misrepresented, just ignore them. It hurts. You know it's not true. But you don't have to defend yourself. God knows the truth. So move on. Move forwards. Don't go down into the mud. The test is, will we engage in a battle to defend our reputation out of personal pride? Or will we hold true to godly character and stay above the argument. If you're innocent, you don't have to spend a great deal of time justifying yourself. Let God vindicate you. Choose your battles wisely. Spend more time fighting for others than for yourself. Far, far more time should be spent defending others than defending yourself. By the way, if you find yourself having to explain why you are the good guy too often, even in your marriage or in the marketplace, perhaps you're not leading that well. If people keep bringing your actions into question or keep saying you're not the good guy and you keep having to tell them really you are the good guy, maybe you aren't the good guy. People judge us based on our actions. We judge ourselves based on our intentions. Maybe you should stop thinking about your intentions and look at your actions. What did they see that they doubted you? Why did they hold a question up to you? You say they're misrepresenting you, but maybe it's because they're judging you by your actions and you're judging yourself by your intentions. I meant to do this. I'm a nice guy. I'm meant to be on time. I'm meant to bring you flowers. I'm meant to be kind. I thought about being generous. I'm actually most of the time thinking about good things. But if you're not doing any of them, then the other person comes and says, he's a stingy guy. He's never on time. How dare you say that? I'm always trying to be on time. No. It's not what you're trying or intending. It's what you're actually doing that people see. So, could it be that you see your intentions and yet your actions are not in alignment? And for this reason, others have a different perception of you than you have of yourself. So don't blame those who misrepresent you. What you have is a great opportunity to learn that they may be right. They may be right. Someone says, you're not trustworthy. Well, did you betray them? Maybe you have been dodgy in your dealings with someone. Maybe you have to build credibility. Maybe you can't deny it. Another test is test of courage and conviction. I won't spend long on this one, but this is just to say every role as a leader requires you to stand up for something. And it will happen if you're a husband or a wife. You'll have to stand up against your own family at times. I don't mean your immediate family. I mean the aunts, the uncles, the granny and the grandpa, the people who are trying to impose on you. Gideon had to go to his own father's house and destroy his father's idols. What were Gideon's father's idols? The things Gideon's father held dear. But God didn't hold them dear. So God expected Gideon to stand up for God even against his own father's household ways. Tough call. Gideon was scared. He did it nevertheless. He went in the dark and with friends. It says he was scared, so he took some 20 guys with him and he went in the nighttime when no one could see him and they still caught him. So he wasn't a very good crook, but he was doing what God asked him to do. He went and he desecrated his father's idols. The people in the town wanted to kill him, but God saved him. Great courage. Samuel Johnson said, courage is the greatest of all virtues because if you haven't got courage, you may not have an opportunity to use any of the other virtues. It takes courage to be generous. You say, I want to be generous. Maybe what you should be saying is, I want courage. Courage is the greatest of virtues because if you don't have courage, you're probably not going to do any of the other virtues. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's doing what is right in the face of fear. That's a character test. Okay, it takes courage to lead your wife, to lead your family, to live a life of faith, to follow God, to do business with integrity. Our courage will be tested. There's a test of distraction. You know, when you get the notes afterwards, you can go through them because what you need to do is just be aware that these tests exist, and then one day when things are going a bit rough, ask yourself, maybe it's one of these tests. Well, when you've been called to do something and you're busy with it, what obstacles are there? With Nehemiah, he was building a wall for God, and he kept getting other guys coming with letters, official letters from important people, saying, come down from your work and let's discuss this. I have sometimes been on a mission and I feel I need to help build this local church. And one of the ways to do that would be to be available to visitors or people that come every Sunday. But I get a constant stream of other guys that come and say, you're the only person that can authorize for us to have money. And so the poor come in this church and they target me and I have to erect a politically incorrect delegation and say, Craig or Tudzu or somebody else, talk to this person. And they may believe I'm treating them as less valuable. I'm not. I know these guys have authority to actually hear their case. I have to be free of them because there's an endless supply from the devil of people who will come and take your time. In fact, sometimes it's a very spiritual person who's not poor at all. They just come and they say, I want to talk to you. And then on a Sunday, they'll talk to you and they won't let you leave for 20 minutes. They should have rather booked a coffee during the week. But 20 minutes on a Sunday means you get to see one person that Sunday. And everyone else has had their tea and coffee and they're on their way home. So that's a distraction. It's looking legitimate. It's looking right and pure, but it's not. It's coming to actually take you away from something more important. Every good leader will learn to discern what is a distraction. And how come it happens so often? Right when you're about to go in the direction God's asking you to go in, this crops up. Maybe your child keeps getting sick. Or maybe it's just as you want to start quiet times again in your life and you open your Bible and then right there, every time you do that, the dog starts howling or the cat starts fighting or I don't know. Basically what you have to do as a leader then is learn what to pander to, what battle to fight, what to run after. Sometimes you have to say no to someone. I can't deal with this now. I'll see it another time, not today. That takes strength because it's offensive. But that person or that obstacle is designed to take you away from what's more important. You can go and read Nehemiah chapter 6 verse 1 to 9. There's also a test of humility. This comes to leaders like Jonah, who was quite a hotshot prophet. Jonah was apparently very in tune with God. You read the book, you don't think he was, but he really was very in tune with God. He was speaking for God, and he was doing ministry for God. He was serving God in a very important capacity. And he had opportunities to minister prophetic words to God's people, Israel, the important tribe, like the chosen ones. And then God said to Jonah, go to the Ninevites. If you understand culture, Jonah wasn't a Ninevite. He didn't love them. They were like dogs to him. If God says to you, go care for those dogs, you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's exactly what Jonah did. He jumped in the wrong boat heading the opposite direction. And in the end, when God gets him, this is in chapter 4, he said, "Oh Lord," because now he's preached to Nineveh. Finally, God forced his hand. The big fish ate him. He was thrown on the beach. There he was. Preaches to Nineveh, prophesies to them, and then they turn to God. He says, "Oh Lord, is this not what I said when I was still at home?" Right at the beginning of the story. That's why I was quick to flee to Tarshish. I knew that you're gracious and compassionate. I knew you were going to help these people. And I didn't want to help them. See, Jonah had no humility. He had become so successful that what God was asking him to do was beneath him. And there will come a time where the person who has the best voice in the whole church is told to sing support vocals to the support vocalist. It just works like that. In your company, maybe you're really important and you're now the head of a whole department, and then someone comes and asks you to do something that you used to do before your promotion. Like, can you go to the photocopy room and fill the photocopy machine with paper, but now you're the manager? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. I'm the manager. You still got 2 legs and 2 hands? But I'm not your servant. No, but you can still serve. You see, this is a question of humility. A leader who promotes himself out of humility. What are you saying? I'm better than everyone else now. I can't do that task anymore. That's the test. So the test will come. It came to Jonah. Jonah got all like a prima donna. You know what a prima donna is? It's like the number 1 ballerina. She must have the best, everything. The best outfit, the best style, the best shoes, the best makeup. If everyone if anyone shines more than her, big trouble. She's going to have a tantrum. Prima donna attitude. Lots of Hollywood celebrities become prima donna in their attitude. They must have the penthouse suite. They want so many thread count cotton on the sheets. What happened with Jonah is he sat under a tree that God caused to grow up, and he had a sense of entitlement. I'm a big shot. I'm entitled to comfort. And then the tree withered. And then he was very upset with God, very angry. He said, I'm not this junior that I shouldn't have a good suite. And God said, really? And that's the last you hear of Jonah in the Bible. No, yeah, for real. Go look in the Bible. Jonah had profile. Because he was too important for honoring God and for being flexible and going into the low place. He wouldn't take the low place. He wouldn't take the discomfort. You never hear of him again. So God bypassed him. And some leaders will get bypassed because they make themselves elite. Then there's shortcuts. With shortcuts like Abraham helping God, the question is, what are you compromising when it comes to taking shortcuts? Lots of leaders want to lead pragmatically. They'll say, see, it works. That's why we should do it. But the end doesn't justify the means. A leader has to be principled. So, for example, when a parent gives in to a nagging child in order to get peace and quiet, it's a shortcut that leads to disaster in the long run. So your child's crying, I want a sweetie, I want a sweet. They keep nagging and nagging. You said no, but now they nag and nag and nag. Eventually you can't handle the noise. You give them the thing they're asking for. That's a shortcut. Because now you're teaching them a bad lesson, that you're actually manipulatable, that in the long term they can have everything they want. I mean, if it's a little girl, pity her husband one day. And so she's been taught that by having a tantrum she can get what she wants. You got a shortcut to peace and quiet. You gave what the person was asking for. But in the long term, you've compromised a value. The value is one of respect and obedience, and no means no and yes means yes. So when you're in leadership, there'll be times where something seems pragmatic, it seems effective. But you have to ask, does this carry our values? Is this compromising our values? An example would be if in a church you want to attract more people, so you start to tailor your church service towards novelty. You're making everything more fun as an experience. You're getting smoke and lights, and you have whole teams of people to make the visitors feel welcome. Because you're bending over backwards to make comfort and entertainment the thing which wins them. What you don't know is that you have to keep providing that level of service in order to keep them. And there are mega churches in America that have had tens of thousands of people because they're so good at winning them by giving them everything they want, but they never matured. Because they came in for comfort and entertainment. When they're asked to make a sacrifice like go plant a church or do a mission to the other side of the world, they're like, no, I could get malaria. No, I just wanted good sound. I didn't want to go to the nations. And if you treat people that way, it's a shortcut. You get them, but you don't get them. And leadership can be like that, whether you're leading your kids or in the business world. If you do something, that's the only way people will be happy. Realize it's the only way you'll keep them happy. Or you can choose to build slower, harder, more genuine. That's why I believe in doing the right things, even if they're not the popular things. We'll rather have slow growth than rapid growth because we don't want people who are undercommitted. No taking shortcuts. Then as a leader, can you take criticism? Can you take correction? Almost all marketplace leaders say they've learned more from their enemies than their friends. In business, your competitors and their accusations against you will teach you more about business than your friends who say, cool ideas, well done, go for it. Someone who comes and says, no one will buy this. This tastes awful. There's your friend. There's the one he's not your friend, but there's the one who's really going to help you to grow. The one who says, you thought you could sell that? Oh, you're such a moron. That's the guy you should listen to. The critic. The guy who says, what are you thinking? Your friends are like, they're just being supportive. But Proverbs says, better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. What it really means is a true friend is going to be so honest with you that you feel criticized by them, that you feel offended that they weren't nice. They corrected you, they challenged you, they criticized you. See, if we're called to be above reproach as leaders, it doesn't mean we're above criticism. It means we have moral integrity, but it doesn't mean every decision is perfect or right. And I've had a few people come and say, this is wrong in the church or that's wrong in the church. Hey, it will take me 2 weeks to like them again. But I learn from them. As a leader, you must be able to learn. You see, if you cannot receive correction, it means in a sense you've become unteachable. And if you can't be taught, you can't grow. And so as a leader, basically, if you can't take criticism and correction well, in an impersonal way, in a charitable way, in a warm-hearted way, if you can't take criticism without making it personal and hating that person, you're going to hit a ceiling and never grow beyond that, because it means you've become unteachable and uncorrectable. So we must always be teachable and correctable. Never as a leader do you put yourself in a position where you're saying, they can't tell me anything. Someone comes to you, it doesn't matter who they are, they could be like the most junior of junior employees, and they come and say, you're running your business wrong. You're like, what? How dare you tell me how to run my business? But go home privately and think through what they said, because it's probably good that you hear it. You don't have to like hearing it. You just have to hear it. Test of failure. Only Jesus is exempt from the test of failure. Because Jesus never fails. God never fails. But the rest of us, we don't usually get it right the first time. In South Africa, I once heard a statistic that if you start a business, and this is for all of you guys who are in business, and you want to make money, you want to make it big. Entrepreneurs should all want to make a lot of money, because why else would you be in business? Don't over-moralize the thing. You must make money. You go to make money. Most guys who ever set out to do business, they failed in their business up to 3 times they bankrupted themselves before the first really successful business. Because there are lessons that no book can teach you, but failure will teach you. There are things that no teacher can teach you, but experience will teach you. And so failure becomes your friend if you learn, as they say, to fail forwards. And my example here was David bringing the ark back to Jerusalem. He started out with every good intention to return the ark to its rightful place. So he has a good plan. He's doing something good for God. He just happens to do it the wrong way. He doesn't even know that he's doing it the wrong way. And Uzzah puts his hand out, touches the cart that's carrying the ark, and God strikes Uzzah dead, and everybody stops. The party is over. Everything was happy until this moment. A guy is dead. What have we done wrong? At that point, if David were a weaker man, he would have given up that plan. He would have said, okay, well, God, obviously we can't work together. You're too violent. Your standards are too high. The interesting thing is, he even does express that. He says at the end of that passage there, how can I ever bring the ark of God to me? How can I ever be reconciled to God? How can we ever have his presence back in the city of David? But if you read on, David figures out what he did wrong. He finds out they're not allowed to put the ark on a cart. They have to put it on poles. They have to follow the commands in Moses' writings from centuries earlier. They were told how to carry the ark. David adapts. And when he finally brings the ark into the city of David, there is jubilation and celebration on a scale that you hardly ever see in the Bible. That's where he was dancing in his underpants. It's not really his underpants, but it's the ephod, which is the undergarment of a king. He took off his kingly robes. His wife, Michal, Saul's daughter, despised him because he was so outwardly worshiping God. He was so clamorously foolish. He was so loudly, it wasn't respectable. He was wildly praising God. Isn't that a redemptive picture? If you consider he tried and he failed and then he got it right. That's a test of leadership. Then there's growth as a test. when you grow, like Moses, Israel grew. Moses didn't grow Israel. Israel just grew. But the growth of God's people caused Moses to have to appoint elders. Thanks to his father-in-law, he got some very good advice that he on his own was not enough for leading Israel. And so Moses appointed 70 elders to take over the task of hearing people's grievances. When growth comes for a leader, it's a big challenge because it means you have to relinquish some of your control and delegate some of your authority. If you hold on too long, you will damage your progress, whether it's your business, whether it's your parenting. If you hold on too tight for too long, things will go bad. So, interestingly enough, growth threatens the very thing you're trying to build. Anyone who's been in business would know this. There's two ways I've seen growth challenges. Let's say you're in a club or a business or a church, and you suddenly double the staff on the team, or you suddenly double the number of people in the room. Do you realize that you've now imported 50% non-culture carriers? In your organization, like Anri has an NGO, she works with a team. If they suddenly get funding, if she got $10 million today, it would threaten the very foundation of her NGO, because she has opportunity to expand, which means recruiting new people, and all the new people she recruits carry none of the culture DNA of her NGO, which means they could sink it. They could come in with a worldly mindset that just totally degrades everything and wrecks the whole heart of the NGO. Your business could have the same problems. You have defined who we are as an identity. We're a happy tribe, and now in comes all this growth, and they call it the vertical invasion of the barbarians. Barbarians in the eyes of the Roman Empire meant the foreigners, the outsiders. And when too many foreigners come in with their culture, they dilute your culture. And in such a manner, growth is a threat to anything. Anything that grows too fast is in danger. Even in human cell multiplication, it's a problem, because the things that grow too fast are cancers. So, again, be careful what you wish for as a leader. Don't dream of suddenly having 10 times the size of influence, because you'll probably crash. In business, growth will test your cash flow. If you have to upgrade infrastructure, like when we need a bigger auditorium, do you think that, or if your business needs a bigger facility, do you think the overheads go up in a smooth growth? No. Your overheads are here, and then if you double the cost of your rent, your overheads go through a step change. But your income, it grows incrementally, slowly on a curve. So every time you grow, you go from a profit to a loss cash flow position. You go in a step increase in your outputs, in your costs, in your overheads. But your incomes are only growing incrementally. So that means before you do a growth move, you actually have to hold back. You have to prepare. A good leader understands dynamics of growth like that. If you're going to suddenly expand at any cost, you'll probably be destroyed. But you must only grow when you've prepared to grow. And that's how God also can use pride and ambition to cause a man to fall. Because you say, I just want to have a big family, I'll have lots of kids. And then you just, 10 years later, you're like, what happened? Success is a bigger test than failure. We're nearly through, and I know our time is pretty much up, but I'm going to push through just a couple more minutes. Success is more dangerous than failure. Why? Because when you fail, you get sympathy and people come alongside of you and help you. When you succeed, it's just you and the devil. It's like success has more subtle seduction. Failure just breaks you, and it's like, you must put the pieces back together. But what you put together when you succeed, it's actually there that subtle seduction comes, like, this is you. You did this. Look how strong you are now. Great, you're really ruling now. You've really taken charge of this thing. You've shown them how successful you are. And I warn you, no human being is made for fame. No human being is made for fame. Not one of us. Why? Because the glory is meant to go to God. It's only God who can handle it because only He's worthy of it. Success actually comes from God. So when we fail to give Him glory, we're just after fame for ourselves. Anybody in the entertainment business is in serious risk. Any performing artists, musicians, they're in serious risk of getting success. If someone looks at you and says, wow, be careful. How do you handle success? Well, you should learn how to receive compliments properly. If someone comes and says, well done, it shouldn't puff up your ego, and how you know is false modesty. It's not me. I was told this story. It's a good story. There's a little old lady, she comes to do an item in church. And she comes and she renders her item, whether she sings her song or I don't know, she does this item and she's like, afterwards, she's like, like basking in the applause. But she goes down off the stage and the pastor says, well done. And then she goes, oh, it wasn't me. It was Jesus. That's, so many people have done that. Yeah, to me, I've gone and given them a compliment. Hey, you cooked really well. You made really nice food or whatever. Not Yari, someone else. Look, she always makes food, but she doesn't say this. So someone once said, it wasn't me. Or it's just the Lord. So as the little old lady says, it wasn't me. It was Jesus. Then the pastor says to her, if it was Jesus, it would have been a lot better. And that's why you mustn't have false modesty, because it's a kind of a lie. How do you genuinely receive praise? Because you should receive praise when you've done well. Jesus Himself is going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. So how do you receive a well done? You receive it acknowledging it. Someone comes to me after I've preached sometimes and says, hey, I really loved your message today. I look at them, I say, thank you for that encouragement. I appreciate it. I do. I want to be, but I don't want to then walk away like polishing a trophy. Instead, the idea is, I've received a compliment, but I know who gave me the skill. So privately, I turn and I go to the Lord and I say, Lord, thank you for the privilege. Thank you, God, that I could do this well for you. Thank you, God, that I could do this well for you. That's how you avoid fame, because it's not about me. It's about what I can offer to God. Someone gave you a compliment. Receive it. Embrace it. Take a well done. It may be culturally inappropriate. I don't care. It's kingdom appropriate to receive a well done. Take a well done, but receive it honestly. Say thank you. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for that word of affirmation. Receive it. No false modesty. Also beware of people who want to elevate you. Some people, they will always, if you're doing something well, flattery. They want someone who they can be proud of. So they can say, look at our pastor. Look at our boss. He's driving a BMW. Oh, he's so awesome, Beware of people who want to elevate you. The rule here with success is turn to God in your success. Turn to God in your success. You know what Israel always did when they grew strong? They turned their back on God. But you as a leader, when you get strong, turn to God. There's a test of perseverance, like right now in this. Timed it perfectly. The long, dull, monotonous years of middle-aged prosperity or middle-aged adversity are excellent campaigning weather for the devil. That was the demon talking to the other demon in the Screwtape Letters and saying, you know what, when someone is going through the long road of life, it's easy at the beginning because you're all passionate for the new thing. But what about from year 5 to year 50 in your marriage? The long, dull, monotonous years of middle-aged prosperity or middle-aged adversity are excellent campaigning weather for the devil. What that quote is trying to teach us is to stay focused and stay zealous. David, when kings went off to war, stayed at home. I don't know why. He got tired. He got bored. Watch out as a leader. You're not at liberty to get complacent, tired, bored, or burnt out. And here's how you will know. When we begin to feel nothing about something that we should feel something for, when we begin to feel indifferent about something that should evoke passion, then we're in danger. If you're not feeling passionate about something that you should feel passionate about, stop and figure out why. Otherwise, you're not going to persevere. Think about your own marriage. Think about the love you had for your business when you set it up. Think about the church you're serving in. When you lose passion, you're in trouble. Romans 12:11 says, never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor. There are more. We have to learn what to keep and what to leave. And we have to be following someone. If you're following someone, make sure that you remain teachable. As a leader, you should always be a follower. There are people I'm following. You might not know this, but there are men I admire who have gone before me. I lead this church not as one who thinks I've arrived. I think I'm like an amateur beginner. And there are men in the faith who I'm looking to as an example, and I'm following their example. You should always be following someone's example. Just choose someone good to follow. Lastly, the test of building for the fourth generation. This is another whole teaching. But something horrible in the Bible is this verse where God's pronouncing trauma for his people. I think it's Hezekiah. And he pleads with God for mercy. So God says, okay, not in your lifetime. The trouble will come on your children. And Hezekiah says, that's fantastic. Hezekiah says, I'm very happy that I get to live at peace and only my kids get to suffer. That's tragic. If what you are building is about you and your generation only, you haven't understood leadership. So you should be building in such a way that you're concerned with how well the next generation will do after you. And that brings us to the last test of your leadership, which is after you lead, do you know when to stop leading and let go? Parents, we try to control our adult children. You mustn't. You must let them go. They must stand or fall on their own feet. In a business, there's a time where you've taken it as far as you can. You hand it over. In church, there's a time where someone should hand over leadership. Gavin did that when he handed over to me. Many of the pastors in the city couldn't understand it at all. And yet he did a very good thing because he knew this is the end of my season. Nelson Mandela did that with South Africa. Probably one of 3 African leaders in history who've handed over their position willingly. It's phenomenal to think about that, but most people don't understand when it's time to let go. Think about that. How will you pass the baton? Merely thinking about it makes you realize you have to raise up others to pass the baton on to. And that will make you a better leader because you won't be building towards yourself. You'll be building towards the next and the next and the next generation after you. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this time where we can consider tests that leaders face. Lord, help us to meditate on these tests and help us to do well when we face them. In Jesus' name, amen.